From James Comey on social media. It's pretty direct. Let's watch and listen.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid. And I hope you're not either. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
So let's have a trial, and a trial we shall have. We assembled our panel for their thoughts on all of this. Bloomberg Politics contributor Rick Davis, Republican strategist, partner at Stone Court Capital, is here alongside Bloomberg Politics contributor and Democratic analyst Jeanne Zaino. She is Democracy Visiting Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Jeanne, is this the historic moment it's being made out to be in the media?
I think so. I think it is one of many, I should say, moments. And, it is just striking because right now, Joe, I am rereading that book, How Democracies Die. It's a great book published in 2018. And you look at chapter 4. The first thing is to capture the referees. The second thing is to enfeeble your opponents. And almost step by step, this is what is going on. We've seen it with Jimmy Kimmel. We've seen it with Lisa Cook. Bill Pulte out just this morning talking about Adam Schiff again. You mentioned Barack Obama, Letitia James. The list goes on and on. So it's not particularly about James Comey, but it is about this just attempt almost step by step to dismantle democratic institutions. You capture the referee by taking hold of the Justice Department. That breaks a norm we've had since Watergate. And then you go after your opponents in the way the president has. And it is a sobering moment for anybody who cares about democracy, regardless of which party you belong to.
And Rick, on the 2024 campaign trail, President Trump would often say, "I am your retribution." Mm-hmm. Many people would brush that off as hyperbolic, and yet we're here. What is the response, do you think, or the feeling on the part of Republicans that are watching this play out?
Yeah, Mario, you're exactly right. He declared his intentions all during the campaign. If you had any question about his intent, all you had to look back to was the 2016 campaign and similar admonitions about vanquishing his enemies while he's president. At that time, he didn't have the team to do it, right? He had people who had served in these capacities before who could resist a demand on his Twitter account. You don't have that now. So the infrastructure is all Trump. Pam, go do this. Pam, go do that. So much for the independence of the Department of Justice. And I think it really has shocked Republicans. I think the raid on John Bolton's home was the first thing that I heard Republicans in the House and Senate starting to say, if he's going to do this to John Bolton, he can do it to anybody. And they're exactly right. I actually thought the Comey video that you just played, where, I refuse to be living on my knees, is going to resonate with a lot of Republicans, who have got those pads on quite a bit for the last 9 months.
Wow, Rick, do you see this as the Rubicon crossing moment that it's being made out to be in the media, or is there some pearl clutching here?
A little bit of both, but it is what it is. Donald Trump has said repeatedly throughout the last few years that he was going to go after the people that went after him. And that's exactly what he's doing. There's no doubt about it. And it is rocking the norms that used to keep Washington together. And so what will be the result? Well, maybe there's going to be a pushback on some of his nominees, especially to the Justice Department. Now he's had unfettered access to, putting people on the bench that have to clear Senate confirmation. Well, maybe that's going to slow down. And nobody really knows at this stage how all this is going to be accepted by the voters. Voters are not going to take it out on Donald Trump. They're going to take it out on you, Republicans running for re-election to Congress. If they're upset about this, you're the bearer of the bad news.
And to piggyback off of that, Jeannie, I mean, how do Democrats, particularly in this environment that we're in over the last 2 to 3 weeks or so, how does the party seize on this from a messaging standpoint to galvanize some of the voters and the base?
Yeah, they are not doing it very well, Mario. I will just say I was looking at some of, not to pick on Chuck Schumer, but he had an important message out yesterday after this happened about healthcare. I get that. You want to focus on kitchen table issues. But the reality is the Democratic Party has a problem in terms of a spokesperson, a leader, somebody to galvanize the party. And that has been a long-term problem and it persists. I think what they've got to do now, which is what we see Schumer trying to do, is focus on taking back the House and reminding people that once they do that, if they're able, that all of those people who capitulated to Donald Trump will be investigated and they will exercise their power of oversight. But I think more important than that is beyond any political party is to educate people about what they are seeing, because we see so much of it. It's hard to put your finger on, well, what do I care about James Comey? Neither Democrats nor Republicans really like him anyways at this point. But the reality is when you break these norms, when you deconsolidate, you do permanent damage to the country and you do permanent damage to a democracy. And we've seen it over and over again in history. So what I would say is read, and understand that Donald Trump is going by a playbook that has been long written, and everybody who reads history knows it when they see it.
Rick, you've seen contempt cases come out of congressional testimony before. Is James Comey right to not be afraid?
Yeah, I think that he is covered under lots of rules that govern administration officials giving testimony to Congress. The Inspector General of the FBI investigated this at the time, said they saw no violations. There was no affirmative decision by Congress at the time that he had lied to them. So at the end of the day, I mean, he's got a pretty good record to run on. And so that's the other thing. I mean, be careful what you ask for. If the president says, I want this man prosecuted, and it results in an acquittal, how's he looking now? And I just think that's, and by the way, that could be at a very sensitive time at the beginning of, the second half of his term. And those are the kinds of things that start the blackbirds chirping that, all of a sudden now he's a lame duck.
Mario, I had to chuckle this morning when I look at the top of the playbook, the Politico tip sheet. They quote Donald Trump from his 2007 book, Think Big and Kick Ass in Business and in Life. Quote, when you are in business, you need to get even with people who screw you, he wrote. You need to screw them back 15 times harder, unquote. How does that work in politics?
Again, this environment that we found ourselves in the last 3 weeks or so is discordant, right? I mean, on the one hand, you have folks calling for unity and forgiveness. And then on the other hand, you have the president really leaning into these red meat issues. And with red meat issues, I think one of the things I would wonder is at what point, especially given that he's in his second term, I mean, what's MAGA's appetite for this red meat, right? I mean, it was fun and games during Trump 1, during Trump 2, particularly with, as Rick and Jeannie know, with the House and Senate at stake. Just how much do voters have an appetite for some of the lawfare that may be dominating the news cycle over the next few months?
Well, it's pretty tasty for MAGA, right, Jeannie? There was a bit of celebration on social media last night.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw Lindsey Graham on Fox, and what was fascinating was he wasn't really talking about the testimony that's subject to these indictments. He was talking about something that a lot of Republicans talk about, a strong distaste for Comey and everything he did, or they believe he did, in the context of Russia. But that is not what he is being charged with, of course. And one of the ironies here, and we're seeing it from the White House messaging all week and today, is that they are going to defend this, saying that Donald Trump is restoring the Justice Department and restoring accountability to the Justice Department. And that's one of the ironies here is when you dismantle, you always defend it by saying you are defending democracy. And that's precisely what we're seeing from the White House today.
Great panel. Rick and Jeanne will be back, of course, in our second hour.